This episode is sponsored by Day by Day Book, a guided journal that helps you navigate the ups and downs of change while creating a life you love. For more information on the classic, recovery, or teen day book, go to livedaybyday.com.
I focused on being consistent, not perfect. And that changed every single thing because I started to realize that even with something like writing, which you don't think is going to apply to something like sports, it actually does get easier when you practice. Like that's why people say like write every day or as often as possible, because you stay in practice, you stay with those muscles. And I didn't ever believe that. I thought the day that I sit down, that's as good as I'll ever get because it's all about just natural talent. And it's just not.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. When we try to understand, let alone describe, our personal transformation to others, it can be a challenge because our path is often riddled with layers of complexity, and it requires time and distance for us to gain enough perspective to make sense of all that we've learned. Jamie Varon has been on a lifelong journey of self-discovery and has the rare ability to cast a light on life's truths in a way that makes anyone who reads her words feel less alone. Inviting us into her world, she shares her daily experience in real life, dismantling the limiting beliefs of her past one by one as she builds a life she loves. In her uniquely raw and relatable style, she draws us all in, nudging us to open our lens just a bit wider and step into a life of greater possibility. Jamie has been open about the self-doubt, years of discontent, and often anger that plagued her in her earlier years, comparing herself to others and battling self-judgment with thoughts of falling short of her true potential. It was not until she made the decision to claim her own happiness that things began to shift. She is one of those writers who finds just the right words to describe the pain, humor, and ultimate joy that is found in the pursuit of self-love and the rewards that eventually come from taking the leading role in your own life. Her words express a vulnerability we all feel, offering support to those of us experiencing similar struggles at a time when the world needs that level of deeper connection like never before. Over the past several years, Jamie's rocket has taken off. Her best-selling nonfiction book, Radically Content, was published in 2022 along with a companion journal and is currently being adapted into a feature film. Her debut novel, Main Character Energy, was published in 2023, and her digital course called Live with Intention has helped over 1,200 people live more intentional lives. In addition, she continues to help select clients build their brands as the founder of Shatterbox, a branding and creative consulting company she established in 2009. There is so much more to her story, so I'm going to stop now and let Jamie share the rest. Jamie, it is beyond exciting to have you here with us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to have this talk. And thanks for such a lovely intro, which I already told you was so lovely.
Yes, well, it's you. It's all you. Jamie, usually I get people started by just kind of starting where you want. Maybe just give us a little bit of context, where you grew up, a little bit about yourself so that we have a little bit of background, and then we'll kind of dive in.
I grew up in the Bay Area near San Francisco in this little town called Danville. It was one of the suburban area that I couldn't wait to get out of, even though now I go back and I'm like, this was lovely. But to me, I was like, this is conformity at its worst. Get me out of here. I was a very rebellious teenager. And once I went to college, I was like, I'm free. I'm going to live my life however the way that I want. And I was wild. I had a good time. I sowed some wild oats, that's for sure. And I started my own business, Shatterbox, in 2009 because I had gotten my first job out of college in San Francisco, and it was at a startup. And I thought that's what I wanted to do for sure. I was so clear, and I wanted all that authority approval. Can I get the
Yeah.
job? I was really into that. And then I lasted 2 weeks and I said, I'm out. Like 2
Oh, I
weeks.
like that though. That's pretty good. That's like, I mean, that's independence right there.
Yeah, I said no. I had a commute. Like I had to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to get on public transportation. And I was like, and it was, I think, 30,000 a year, my salary or something. And I was like, this is not going to work. And like, it was one of those startups where they were very, you have plenty of time later in life for your friendships. You need to give this job all you want. It was every single thing with that startup in the 2 weeks was like every bad experience you could have in a workplace. Like
Yeah.
everything was just collapsed into those 2 weeks of like the terrible commute, the terrible hours, the wanting me to be a certain way, wanting me to give my life to a job, everything, the bad boss, the bad other boss, like all of it. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, no. And I thought I was just going to get a different job. And instead, I made this website that went viral called twittershouldhireme.com because I wanted to work at Twitter at that time. It was 2008. Like Twitter was
Yeah.
cool then. And it was just getting started. And then it went viral. And instead of me getting a job at Twitter, which I thought I was going to do, someone went, hey, this website's really cool. Can you make me one? And I was like, yeah. How much do you want to pay me? And then I just started somehow getting clients like all the time. And I said, I guess this is what I'm going to do now.
I never knew that story. And just for people that don't know this, you and I have worked together a little bit. So I know the Shatterbox work. And that is like, well, I mean, that started a whole career, right?
Yeah. And I
Wow.
traveled and I did a lot of different things. And I was one of the first, now they call it digital nomad and all these things that I was like,
Yes.
back in 2009, people were like, yeah, it was just me going to Rome with my laptop. And people were like, you don't have a real job. And I'm like, I don't. It's amazing. Honestly, I was so unself-conscious back then, The internet wasn't what it is now, so I didn't have to explain my choices to anyone, and I just said, "I'm young." And my mom, like, she has her own business, my dad has his own business, so they were just like, "Go. Who cares?"
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, and you were doing that up until when you and I worked together, which was what, like later 2018, no, 2016, 2017, something like that, where you moved to Cannes.
Yes.
But I'm probably jumping ahead. You keep going.
Yeah, I did that for a very long time, but I've always been writing on the side. I had a blog and then I started writing. I had a job at a place called Thought Catalog in 2015 for about a year. I then did some freelance writing for publications. I've been on Medium, Substack, every single place that I could write, I've
Mm.
written. And I've always just done that on the side, always dreaming of one day writing a book. And then I realized, I think when I turned 30, it hit me that I had been dreaming and not doing. And I was like, this doesn't feel great. And then it took a few more years before I actually put the pen to paper and was like, just be consistent and finish a book. Like, don't even try to get it published. Don't try to do anything. I was just like, I need to prove to myself that I could actually write a whole book because it was becoming kind of like a complex for me, that
Hmm.
I have this dream that I say I want to write books, but I'm not writing them. There was that kind of come to Jesus moment of, are you going to do what you actually say you want to do? Or because now this is just getting annoying. Like I got annoyed with myself.
And sometimes it takes that, right? To just be truly irritated by your own internal voice where you're like, stop, just stop.
Yeah,
But you know what I think is really what's great that how you put this is you just kind of put one foot in front of the other. It was kind of like, just get that first chapter done. Just get that. Like, it's almost like writing a paper. I mean, I hate to put it, that's equating it to an educational thing, but like where you literally, it's just like put pen to paper. Don't think of the outcome. Cause I think, and I know that this was the case before I wrote my book. It was like, everybody, oh, you've got to get it published. It's got to, there's so many things that people will say that freak you out even before you get started. It takes just the wind out of the whole thing if you go down that path. So you really do just have to say, I'm just doing this to do this. And then whatever becomes of it is going to become of it.
exactly. You got to get to that point. Like that's where I got because every time I would sit down, I was like, am I writing a New York Times best-selling novel right now, or like a best-selling book right now? And it was like, get in my head, write one sentence, and then don't write anything for 6 months. I just had to get to the point where, one, I am going to stop talking about books until I actually finish one. Like, I wouldn't tell anyone what I was working on, because it's actually like they've done studies that talking about something can give you kind of like the dopamine hit that you're supposed to get from doing the thing.
Oh, then that's pretty powerful, actually.
Yeah, you can't because it gives you some like social, people will be like, ooh, you are? Oh, you're working on a book? And it's like, but then you don't actually finish it, or you don't do it because you kind of get the approval, the rush, so I had to say to myself, this was like 2019. I had been trying to work on a book. I had failed book proposals. I mean, my hard drives are just littered with outline 2015, outline 2 2015, or like outline 2013. And they're just like half
Right.
pages. And I'm like, I had to have so many hard conversations with myself where I was like, an outline's not a book.
Right. It will get you there eventually, but it's not a book.
It might, but if you're stuck or like reading a book about writing books is not writing a book.
Right.
Like,
it's so true.
you know, like you're not going to know until you know. And I think there was finally the advice from somewhere on the internet. Someone said something somewhere that was like, your first draft can suck. And that was the most freeing thing. I didn't know that though. I was looking at my first draft, or even my first paragraph, and comparing it to the novels I love or the books that I love.
I would find myself typing, and I do it on my computer so that I could go back and make my corrections. And people are like, don't do that. Just let it flow. Let it come out. Which is where I started writing. I was writing for a while there too, because I was like, I need to just to get it out, because otherwise you get stuck in the like, oh, okay, I'm going to edit this down to the perfect sentence. You could be doing that forever.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I got to the point where I was like, just do it in Google Docs. Get over yourself. You don't need any fancy platform. You don't need a cabin in the woods. You don't even need for this to be good. Just put words on the page and see if you can actually do this. Because I had noticed that there was a lot of living in my head, which for writers, of course, that's what we do. Like, you live in your head. That's the whole point. But if you live too much in your head, you're not actually doing the things. And once I finally finished a draft of something, I remember I finished in 2019, what I finished was a book proposal, which is kind of a hefty document. I think a book proposal might actually be harder than writing a novel. It's not fun work. But once I had the finished book proposal, I was able to edit. And the relief that I felt that I actually finished this thing, it gave me so much confidence. I was like, what else can I finish? What else can I do that just sucks, but it's actually words on a page that I can make better? I was like,
right?
I was so excited about it. I was like, it was like the most crazy thing to realize, because what I had done in 2019 was I had a routine where I would go to the gym in the middle of the day. I worked in the morning, did my client work. I would go to the gym. And then after the gym, I forced myself to go to like a coffee shop to work on this book proposal for just 2 hours. I didn't tell anyone. Nobody knew where I was. Didn't tell my husband, didn't tell my mom. These are my two people that I always tell things to. And then after like a few months, I kept seeing it was like stacking up. And I was like, wait a second. Like, I felt like I had discovered the biggest secret in the world, that like, if you just stay consistent and do things
like 2 hours a day,
right? Like, it doesn't have to be a lot. It works. And I was like, are people right that like discipline?
It actually works.
I was like, whoa, this is amazing. This is the craziest thing. Like, I don't know how that just got by me. I thought that you just got to be perfect right away, and you don't do anything until you're perfect. And then that really gave me a lot of kind of energy. I mean, from there, I wrote a memoir that nobody will ever read. I just decided that I would write it though. I finished that book proposal. It got a bunch of rejections, and I was like, okay, that sucks. But then I was still motivated after the rejections. And to me, getting rejected was my absolute worst fear. Like, absolute worst fear. But then standing on the other side of it, I was like, I'm alive. I didn't die. I didn't spontaneously combust from those rejections.
Yes.
And I still want to write. It was so freeing. And so then I wrote a memoir, a draft of a memoir. I wrote a draft of a novel that is so bad. Like, all of these were bad. They're not good, but it was practice. The memoir might be okay, but the novel had no scenes. Like, there would be chapters where there was no dialogue because I was so used to nonfiction that I didn't realize I needed dialogue. And I was scared of dialogue because I didn't know how to do it. So now dialogue's like my favorite thing to write. I love writing dialogue. But at that time, in the beginning of 2020, I was afraid of dialogue. And so
Yeah.
then from there, I kind of knew what I needed to know. That's another
Yeah.
thing. Until you do the thing, you don't know what you need to know yet. Like, you don't even know where you're at. So then I was like, okay, now I need to learn structure. I need to learn some like storytelling structure, and I need to learn some like dialogue tips and what I need. Like, there was just some things that I was like, okay, that I know that I can work on some craft, and it all started from there. Then in September 2020, I worked on what would become Main Character Energy, the novel. That would come out 3 years after I wrote it.
And now, by the way, this all is happening as you're writing daily still. You're on Instagram at this point. By
Yeah.
2020, you were definitely on Instagram. And I just want to mention this because this is where I was starting to see, like, okay, the stuff that you're putting out daily, I don't know if you're posting daily, every other day, whatever, but that was really amazing stuff because that was more snippets, not only of your writing but it was coming from the heart. It was kind of your processing as you're doing a lot of this other stuff.
Exactly. So in 2020, by that point, created my course. So this whole thing of like, if I'm consistent and I just chip away at something for an hour or so a day, opened up everything for me. So not only was it it was a mindset shift though, because I had always waited to be good enough, quote unquote. And upon realizing that I can work on something, put my time into it, go back and edit, go back and refine it, I felt less pressure to be good enough right away. And so
Right.
my perfectionism, which was really just like a paralyzing, you don't start ever, was like abolished, because what
Right.
I did was I focused on being consistent, not perfect. And that changed every single thing, because I started to realize that even with something like writing, which you don't think is going to apply to something like like sports, it actually does get easier when you practice. Like, that's why people say like write every day or as often as possible, because you stay in practice, you stay with those muscles. And I didn't ever believe that. I thought the day that I sit down, that's as good as I'll ever get, because it's all about just natural talent. And it's just not. You can progress. And so it was really interesting with that. And it was more so me getting over that fear of not being good enough, that fear, that self doubt that was just, it haunted me. It haunted me, that self doubt. I also, even though this sounds like it would be a good thing, I also had growing up a lot of positive reinforcement, which can sometimes really get in your head because you think you have to be good at everything right away. It was always like, Jamie, you're so talented, you're so smart, you're so this. And I was like, great. And I got addicted to being good at things. And then if I didn't feel like I was good at something right away, it caused this incredible overreaction of like, oh my God, I'm not good at this. I can't, I'm not going to get any better. What does that mean? I don't want to look at that. So I'm just going to quit.
Well, and what I think is always so telling about that kind of a thing, and I know just talking with people that are overachievers, which I've talked to several, just about what that feels like that overachievement. And with you, especially in your writing, I am sure you recognized that the less pressure you were putting yourself on, like that you were putting on yourself to write the perfect thing, opens up a whole nother channel. Because when I look at your writing and I think of, just how it's progressed over the years, it's freer. It feels like, maybe because a lot of what you're writing is about going through that process of change. But oh man, it can become just a free flowing thing that you don't even realize is inside you. And that's where the beauty comes from, right? Of like really genuine writing that's coming from the soul, not the, did I get the perfect sentence out there that everybody's just going to love type of thing. It comes from the heart.
Like Radically Content, I wrote that the summer of 2021. And I still to this day have never been able to capture the joy that I had writing that book. It was magic. I was in the flow of all flows. I also felt very pent up about how long it had been. I felt so excited that like I actually had the book deal. And it was one of those where like they came to me. So it felt even sweeter. I'd write a couple hours in the morning and it was that total flow. Like I would just not put pressure on it at all. I kind of knew what the chapters needed to be, but I didn't know what the stories would be to an extent that I was so in the flow and like channeling that when I read the audiobook, I didn't remember the stories that I wrote. And I was like, whoa, this is really good. Like, I was like, how did I get here? And because of that, every day when I was done, I'd go to the beach and go on a walk. And I was like always filling my cup back up. It was all in service of this process. And I think since then, it's gotten a little trickier because it's one thing to write books, it's another to start having them published. And then they start getting reviews and they start getting sales figures. And it changes the dynamics of the art a little bit. But that time, it felt very free. I felt like I was channeling. And even like with my novels, it's a little different to channel, but I don't do a big outline. I sit down and I'm like, where does this character want to go today? And I just let it tell me.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, this is so fun. And I love that part. That like trust in the process gets really blocked by the self-doubt. It's almost like you cannot access that trust because the self-doubt is like, no, you need to read another book about how to outline. And you need to read like another, you need to like make sure you're doing it correct. And when you look at it, you're like, art doesn't follow any correct
No.
anything. There's no formula. If you can notice a formula in someone's art, it's like,
There's a problem.
yeah, it's like, I don't
Yeah.
really like this as much. When you're like, oh, I can see how this was manufactured and put together. It's like, it's not as
Right.
great. But there's no point in making any art or doing any writing if it's not just coming from the soul. That's what I do. My newsletters that I do every Friday, I never plan them out ever. I never know what I'm going to write. I just sit down Friday morning and go. And I've been doing that since like 2018.
But that's how it works, right?
It does.
I have heard from people that have written full books that say, I was literally a channel. It just came through me. And honestly, I think that it's like getting out of your own way is what
Totally.
makes the work better. And when you said that fear that comes up, though, what do you do now when that voice comes up to you, the voice of perfection? Like, what do you do now to combat that?
Honestly, I just laugh.
Like, here you are again.
No, because I'm just like, what do you want from me? Especially when the perfectionist voice is trying to control things that I know are completely out of my control. I'm almost like disdainful. Like, are you freaking serious? Like, what could you possibly think that I could control here? Talk to the higher power here because I'm not the one, I'm just the faucet. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not doing so. It's really kind of funny when I hear it because I'm just like, all right. And the thing that I've noticed is that if I give it a lot of air, if I'm like, no, but this happened and this happened, so you can't have doubt, it's like, it doesn't really go away. But when I just say, okay, I hear you, but I'm just going to keep going.
Thank you for your input. I'm going to keep going.
Exactly. Like every time I did that, I felt like it got quieter because I had noticed I had a decade of experience of what it felt like to listen to that voice and then have to deal with the consequences of the anxiety and the self-loathing that comes from listening to that voice, because it would be the voice. I would sit down to write. I was always dutiful. I would sit down to write, and then the voice would come in, and then after an hour or two, I'm exhausted by the voice. Nothing has been done, and I just have to slink away from the computer. And I hated that feeling. And so I knew that if I listened to that voice for a number of days, and I take that as, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't write today. Yeah, you're right, I shouldn't work on this. I'm not good enough. That doesn't last a couple of days. That could be years. And so I was like, I am determined to not let that voice dictate what I do, because I know some of the best things that I've written, it's through, I just wrote a newsletter last week, and I was like, I don't want to write today. I mean, I really didn't want to do it. And I was like, I have nothing to say. It's about to be Memorial Day weekend. No one's even going to read this. This is so stupid. Why am I doing this? What's the point? And then I wrote what to me was one of the most healing things I've written in a long time. So there's more evidence to stack up, because the belief is, if I'm feeling this way, I'm not going to write anything good, or I'm never going to write anything good. And then to show myself that I still can write something that I feel proud of, even when I'm battling that voice, I was like, oh, okay, so you can't get me down. Like, that voice can't intimidate me, which is so profound to me, because that voice ran my life for at least 20 years. I mean, it just told me everything that I can and can't do. It was this constant chatter in my head.
As we all know, change is inevitable. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere, leaving us to pick up the pieces and navigate our way through the unknown. Other times it's a decision we've made to step into a bigger version of ourselves or find more joy or fulfillment in our lives. Day by Day book was designed to help you face the discomfort of those shifts in life that are pushing you to that next level of growth and learning. It's a guided journal with a simple tracking system to manage your daily well-being during challenging times, setting you up for success no matter what life throws your way. Join our community of over 15,000 changemakers and get started on your daybook journey today. The time is now to step into change to create a life you love. To get your Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com. So do you think, I mean, now that you have written the books that have just gotten you started, right? You're on your way. Now that you're at this point, where do you feel you are in terms of self-confidence, of like, what has shifted for you? I say this only because writing a book doesn't change. It changes your life in a lot of ways, but your life is still your life, right? So what are the internal shifts that you felt, knowing that you were, like you said, you had somebody come to you? Not everybody's going to have a publisher come to them and say, let me publish your book. So like, you had some really, like, suddenly you were being pulled into something that was going forward pretty rapidly. How did those internal shifts happen? And what do you think were some of the most profound changes?
There's just so little you can control, especially with what happens when your art goes out into the world, and especially what happens when a book goes out into the world. I mean, anyone knows you can give it a good push, but you never know what's going to take off. Everyone could say that. And I think that I've recognized how much I need my confidence and self-belief to come from inside of me, to come from just doing the work and sitting down and actually moving forward. But the shifts necessary to do that was just like, essentially knowing what the process is, knowing that if I write something, I can always edit it, I can always work on it, knowing that I don't like how I feel when I don't listen to my dreams, when I don't actually act on the things that I want to act on. I've also recognized how little external validation drives you. It's funny because I thought all the external validation would drive me. And now I find it quite empty and not really as appealing. Like, I'm not going to block it. I'm not going to say I don't want any external achievement. But when it comes to doing my art, I'm like, if that's what I'm doing it for, I mean, you're just going to go up and down with someone says something nice, someone says something horrible, someone says, it's like,
Oh, and it can be very seductive. It can be very
Very.
seductive, right? And I think just how you described you're getting yourself into that mode of writing, it's all internal. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still coming home to yourself. You know, you may be going to fancy dinners. You may have a lot of people saying how wonderful you are, but you still come home to yourself. And that I think is what is so, it's jarring in a way, and yet it's comforting in another way because it's like, I get to figure this out. I get to make this what it's going to be, not anybody else.
Exactly. We love to buy into this myth when we're on the sidelines watching other people do these things. It comforts us that one day when I get there to wherever that person is, it'll be easier. And what I have found, which has been the most humbling and freeing thing, is it gets harder. And it's like, ain't that a kick in the pants? Like, really? It gets harder. Right. Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason people talk about the second book syndrome when it comes to writing your second novel or your second book. It's harder because you know what it takes. You know that there are going to be people that love it and there are going to be people that abjectly hate it for what you feel are absolutely ridiculous reasons. But you're like, I mean, it's your opinion, I guess. This offended you to your very core. I don't know. I mean, it's just okay.
Yes.
Whatever. And you
Yeah.
know that there's a lot out of your control when it comes to who reads it and who doesn't and all of that. I just recently wrote and turned in the draft to my second novel. And it was challenging, but I will say, I think because I had a lot of this mindset in place, I don't think I fell into a lot of those pitfalls because I was so focused on the process of doing it. And I felt like my confidence was higher because I knew I could finish this book. This was just a different experience because it was on a deadline and I had never been on a deadline. I was the type of student that I was doing the paper the night before. I was not, but this time I had to really, I was like, Jamie,
Yes.
you actually care about this time. So
Yeah.
you got to plan it out.
Yeah.
and,
Oh, well.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I did. No, I turned it in right on time and I was really proud of myself. And the thing is that once you start doing this work and you are publishing books, the one thing that you could probably count on is you're just going to have to write more books. Outside circumstances are going to change. You might be, yeah, okay, this time, instead of writing a novel on spec, essentially, because you don't know if it's going to get published, this time it was in contract and on a deadline. But guess what? Still had to write the book. It's you still are just you and the page. You don't get to sit there and go, well, I have 3 books under my belt. Like it might help a little bit. And I think those have been very humbling, beautiful things to recognize because I have a tendency to future project. And I always am like, when is it going to get easier? And it's like, I don't think it does.
Where's the shortcut? Where's the shortcut? There is something so wonderful, though, about the angst that comes along in the writing process. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but there is something about it that the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it is part of it. It's part of the magic of it. It's part of the sparkle that you get when you get to see your book, like when it's done and it comes out of those little box opening thing. I always watch those because I'm like, that is the moment, right?
Yeah.
That it becomes kind of real. And it's like, wow, I made this thing that came out in the world. And what I also found funny is after I published my book, I was like, I don't ever want to see it again. Like it wasn't that, but it was like, it's out of me. It's up and it's out of me. And it is now no longer my baby.
Well, yeah, especially, I mean, that's how I felt when my novel came out. People were like, are you celebrating? Are you so happy? And I was like, I have been with this book for like 3 years. And that's not even that long. There's people that have spent 10 years working on the same book and stuff. So I feel very fortunate. To me, that was a long time, but other people have had a pretty long lead time. And I was like, I don't know. I'm done with it, I guess, But I agree. I remember this last time when I finished this novel. I finished it and then I knew that I had to do some editing and work on it. And so before I turned it in, because I am a good student. I can't just turn in my roughest draft to my editor and be like, fix this. I had to do some work. And so I was so like, I couldn't look at my desk at home. I was like, I need to go somewhere else. I was hitting that wall so hard that I was like, I'm just doing anything I can. Like I went up to Santa Ynez near me and I found this like little hotel, cute place. And I was just like, Jamie, you're going to be a goblin. You're going to finish this. Like, I was like, and then I got in the weird thing of like, you want to eat whatever snacks help you, but then the snacks are like not good for you. So then you don't have your mental faculties. And then like I was in a cycle of just like, is this ever going to end? And I'm looking at the draft and I'm like, I'm not even halfway through because people don't realize every time you edit your book, you got to read a whole book.
Yes.
Think of how long it takes to read a book. Then you got to like add in that you got to be critical of it. Oh my God, I was so tired at the total end. And then once I turned it in April 1st. And I think like that day just like collapsed almost. And it was just like 3 or 4 days of me being over dramatic where I was like, I'll never have energy ever again. I never want to write a book ever again. This is the worst. I was so tired. But then once it faded and I like work, now it's almost 2 months later and I'm like, I could write another book. Like I could be ready again. It's like fun. Now I look back at that time where I like was so tired. I'm like, good for me. I gave it everything. Like, of course, I know we like the work-life balance and I agree, but there are some things that you need to give it 100%. You got to put your foot to the gas. And my thing is in recognizing which thing it is so that you don't like, I'm not giving 100% to the laundry and then give, like it's
ever really,
like it's
right?
not going to happen.
No, yeah.
I will let that laundry sit in the laundry basket clean no matter what. It's never getting put away right away. That's not on the list of priorities. And if it is for you, more power to you. It was very interesting upon realizing, especially during this past time when I knew that I had a deadline, that I was like, there are some things that, like, I think of my life as a set of burners on the stove. And I'm like, this burner right now for my writing has to be at 100%, has to be on high. Everything else has got to simmer. And I was like, I give myself permission to let it simmer. One, because I know it's not forever. So it's a temporary thing. And I know that when I turn this book in, I want to feel like how I feel now, which is there's nothing I could possibly think to change. Like I gave it everything. I thought through everything. I exhausted myself.
You left it out on the field.
Exactly. And it feels really good to do that. There's a certain level and there's a certain mindset you have to get to in order to do that. You have to believe in yourself. The doubt can often be the distraction. It'll take up so much energy. And so I just focus on like writing the best book that I could possibly write, pushing myself. Like I use my first book as like my first novel with main character energy. I use that as like, what can I do to improve upon every single thing? And that excited me. It really showed me for someone who was like a bad student. I mean, I was smart kid, bad student because I'm such a rebel. I was like, why do I got to learn this? What do you need from me, a writer, to know geometry? Please tell me.
How dare you?
Yeah, exactly.
How dare
seriously,
you?
I was like 13. Like, how dare you? I was a bad student, so I didn't know how much I had it in me. And it's been such a joy to find the one thing in my life that I will withstand so much discomfort in order to do it. It's joy, it's discomfort, it's pain, it's so many things. But at the end of the day, when it's done, I'm like, I felt like I had come out of some sort of portal or something. And I know now as I've been, you have to wait a long time to get notes usually. I mean, I probably won't have notes on this until November. So that's a long time to just sit. I've been telling myself, I'm like, either this is like one of the best things I've ever written, or it's like really bad. and I don't know which, and I'm fine with either. Like either way, we're going to get there. And it's so freeing because I'm like, the thing that I didn't want to do, and this is when doubt runs your life, is if I had let doubt run the whole show, I would turn this in just as fast as possible to get it out of my life. And I would just be anxious this entire time waiting for notes. Now, I don't care. Like I'm excited to get the notes back because I'm excited to work on it. I think that that's so important. And what you're saying is like, it's all mindset. That's what I didn't get before. I felt like that I had doubt because I just wasn't good enough. Like I put those two together and it was like, no, I have doubt because I'm not showing up. I'm not actually doing the thing. And once I started doing the thing, even in the smallest increments, it kind of started me writing regularly. It started in 2018. I would write what I called Friday letters, and I would send it out to my email list. And they were like newsletters that now newsletters are a big thing, but at that time, no one was really doing that. It was more like sales emails, but newsletters were different. I noticed that when I showed up every Friday and I didn't let myself get out of it, it wasn't every week. I was like, well, should I write it on Friday? I don't know. Do I feel like I can? Can I do it? Do I have inspiration? I was just like, you will write every Friday. I can be so like hard on myself, but kind of in a good way,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yes.
you will not try to weasel your way out of this, girly.
Yes.
Get your shit together.
But it's true though. I mean, and once you get into that habit, that's one thing I found. Like the idea of it can feel really daunting in the beginning. I think sometimes like the newsletters and the things that are those weeklies, it just becomes part of your week after a while. And especially because you were getting yourself into that practice of writing. Okay, what would you say to somebody that is sitting back right now listening to this and is like, God, I've wanted to start that book. I've just wanted to start that book. I've been talking about it forever. What would be the first thing that you would tell them to do?
Well, honestly, I'd probably say if you're not writing regularly and you're scared to, I would do like 30 minutes one time a week. And you make that sacred. Sacred. The problem is you don't make it sacred enough. And the moment you say, this time is not negotiable and it is sacred, things change. I've watched a lot of people who, they'll come to me after they've tried to do the really extreme things and they realize that they don't work. Like if you say to yourself, what we do, we try to overcompensate. Like say you want to start writing, you're like, okay, I'm going to write every single day. And it's like, I mean, try it.
You have a life. You're going to be probably missing one day or two.
Yeah. And like, it's too much pressure. We really underestimate how much like one thing kept religiously can create so much momentum. I mean, for me, I'm now writing books on deadline, writing novels, writing all of this. Like I can sit down, if I had an idea today, I would have no worry that I could sit down and write it in a few months, couple months, like, and no doubt. And that is an incredibly freeing place to be as someone who thought that they struggled with writer's block for a long time and couldn't write that regularly. It started from one day a week writing that newsletter. And the newsletter, the beauty of it was I set it up as just write whatever's true in that moment. And then when it became time to start working on books, it was like, just write whatever is coming up right now. And you can write a draft 0 that it goes nowhere. And you're going to think, oh no, I don't have time to waste. It's like, well, the time is going to pass anyway. So you are either going to spend that time getting mad at yourself that you're not writing, or you can spend that time writing 30 minutes one time a week or 2 times a week. Make it realistic. I think that's so important. Like, that's why I love my Live with Intention course, because it'll make you have to look at your day and the way that you work realistically. Like for me, if I said to myself, I'm going to write at 2 p.m. after I've done all my work and all this stuff, it's never going to happen. 2 p.m. is my dead time. That's when I have to go do something else. But I know just from all the knowledge that I have about myself that 9 to 11 a.m. That's when I can capture myself and write. And then I'm done. Like, I wrote this last draft, even on deadline, writing 2 hours a day because I know there's not much more to give. But the thing is that we often like push ourselves so much that like then we exhaust ourselves for the next day and all of this. So,
well, and the other thing too that I think is really was helpful for me is that you recognize the time of day that you write best. I write best in the morning. I am completely clocked out by the afternoon. I have no energy to write. And I mean, it's true. Some people just have that certain times of the day that they feel more creative. They get more out. And I think that that's something to also look at. The other thing too is journaling because, and you and I have talked obviously exhaustively about this because to give you guys a sideline, Jamie designed the day by day book, which is awesome. And I love her for it. But that was like, even if you're journal writing, that's writing, right? So maybe you're not writing pages in the morning that are going to start a book, but get yourself started in just like putting something down on the page because I think it comes up and out. And it's a really good way to recognize what's going on up there because sometimes you don't even realize what's going to come out. That's the beauty of that.
Totally. Having a journaling habit is so important. And also, I think just recognizing that, like, if you're not writing regularly, what is like in your head is not going to be translated to the page yet. It's the most frustrating thing. It's probably how musicians feel. They have this incredible vision and ear for music, but when they start, they're not going to be able to replicate it right away. They're going to have to learn how to do certain things. Like, you're not going to be Mozart on the piano right away. Like, you're going to have to learn. And I find that for some reason, writers don't understand the value of practice. They don't think that it's not as measurable as, say, people who play a sport or play an instrument. And yet with writing, once you're doing it more, once you've built up a body of work, your ability to hear a sentence in your head or have a thought in your head and translate it into something becomes a lot easier. And so you have to give yourself grace in the beginning. That's why I always say, and I've told people to focus on being consistent more than being good, because you might be amazing. I mean, I've never written anything truly bad, but it wasn't up to the standard that I needed it to be, and it wasn't quite there yet, and that's okay. But having that ability to translate your ideas and be able to take a plot, because as much as we love outlines and plots and a plot idea is not an idea. You need 40 plot ideas to make a novel because you need like 40 chapters or scenes, or I mean, you're going to be so humbled by how many ideas you need in order to write a novel, for example, because you just need constant. These characters got to be doing things all the time. It's crazy.
I mean, they're people.
Yeah,
They're people.
like, man, they are always having conversations, and I got to think of what they're saying. It's so bizarre.
Right.
But you need to be comfortable with your ideas. You need to be comfortable generating ideas. And also, you need to be able to see that your ideas are infinite and abundant. If you work in a lack, I talk to a lot of writers who they're like, I had an idea 5 years ago and I lost it. And now it's like, I'm like, you have so many ideas.
There's a lot more where that came from.
I think just like getting past that fear and getting more into the consistent effort. And it's going to serve so much, because when people finally make that leap and they go, okay, I'm just going to devote and make something sacred in my schedule, that this is for this thing, this is for my writing. They don't realize that within like a month of doing that consistently, their whole perspective changes.
Yeah.
Suddenly they feel more confident and they feel more optimistic.
Because it's out there. You can see what you produce too, right? You've got data to support. For those of us who are analytical and want to have the data to support, you see it right in front of you.
Exactly. And that's just crucial.
Now, Jamie, I could talk with you for the rest of the day, which I might just hold you captive. First of all, I want to let everybody know all of Jamie's information is going to be in the show notes, and please check her out because she is magic. Her writing is amazing, and you will know what I'm talking about once you start reading her writing. But what I wanted to ask you, my last question to you is, what's next? What's coming up for you?
Next novel will be probably September 2025.
Do we know the title?
We don't have anything
and
yet.
We would not be disclosing it at this point.
No, we will not be sharing that yet. What's next is I never know what's going to be next. So that's like in the future of right now, but there's some things kind of cooking in the background. This is the thing. Once you get to a certain place in your career, there's a lot that cooks in the background that you can't talk about.
So is this just a to be announced? This is just to be announced then? That's
yes,
your answer?
TBA. TBA.
TBA.
Stick around.
But a book coming in September.
Yeah, 2025.
This is the third, well, really fourth, because you have your journal too, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Jamie, always such a pleasure.
Thanks.
As you know, I love you dearly. And we're going to keep an eye on you. Thank you again.
Thank
you. It was
you.
so nice.
You too.
All right. That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.